Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Wollmann. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode, a very special episode of Between Two Chairs. My name is Fernando Arencibia, and with me, as always, is the incomparable Jennifer Wollmann. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello. Good morning. And we're super excited. We're super excited today because we've got James Kohnstamm with the Beacon Council. He's the Executive Vice President of Economic Development for the Beacon Council. And we have him on because we feel like knowing your state, local, and county economic development agencies are very, very important so that you know where real estate is and, more importantly, where it's going in your area. So thank you so much for joining us, James. I know you guys have been super, super busy. James has directly managed over 200 economic development projects that have generated over 15,000 jobs and $3 billion of investment for Miami-Dade County. We're going to have him talk a little bit about himself in a little bit, but I wanted to let you know, Fernando, I think one of the reasons that you guys get along so well is that he's a former English and history teacher. So I didn't know if you knew that. Fernando was also a former high school teacher. So, and he's still, both James and Fernando, you guys both still have the heart of a teacher.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome.
So, James, tell us a bit about yourself and your role with the Beacon Council.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. Great to connect in the new year, and looking forward to the conversation. So I'm a Seattle native, born and raised, moved to Miami about 20 years ago. Didn't really know much about Miami when I came. It just so happened that my then girlfriend, now wife of almost 20 years, is born and raised in Miami. So we came here, and I started working at the University of Miami and did my master's in international administration there, and then met a guy named Manny Mencia, who many of your listeners may know, but he's been the longtime senior VP for international investment for the state of Florida, now retired, but clued me into economic development. And so I joined Beacon Council. It'll be 18 years this February. So quite a number of years. And what's been fascinating is when I started, we were just at the tipping point or the end point of the last real kind of run on Miami. I thought, coming into economic development, wow, this is easy. Everybody wants to be here. Miami's hot. And then so quickly it changed in 07, 08, of course, right? And then that was kind of just like holding on for the ride and seeing where the community goes. And of course, the kind of the long build out of the last recession. But that really gave me some perspective, particularly on Miami, but just how cities kind of ebb and flow, where the opportunities for growth are, where those pitfalls and challenges are, and how we can, build our economy in a way that's more sustainable over the long term. It's been, as you mentioned in the intro, a number of great projects and opportunities that we've worked on over the years. Beacon Council's historically primary focus, and we can maybe later get into some of our new strategic plan that our CEO just rolled out in the last few months, but we've been really focused on kind of the core of traditional economic development, business recruitment and retention. It's all about job creation, quality jobs that are paying at least the average wage or higher, have benefits, or in target industries where we see, real growth opportunities. And, Miami's been able to have some really great wins over the years. This has been a market that I think I have one of the more fun jobs out there, because you're kind of in the mix between private sector, kicking the tires, and you learn about all these different interests of what companies are trying to do, and the public sector of government trying to manage some of that growth and the challenges along with it. Get to travel around the country, around the world, and tell our story. And people love to hear about Miami. It's a market that you can pretty much go anywhere in the world, and people know what Miami represents. A lot of times it's sun and beaches and fun, and that's great. But that gives us, at least if that's it, at least it gives us an opening into a further conversation about this.
Great. And how has the Beacon Council's goals or focus changed since you've been there?
Ooh. Like any industry, there's trends. There are things that are global, national, or more local, regional trends that kind of impact what we do. So again, kind of that core base function of what we're trying to accomplish in growing the economy based on job creation, that doesn't really change. Of course, the metrics, the expectations increase every year, which, as it should, as our market grows. But it's interesting, there was a time, we go back to when I first started, and we'll remember when Jeb Bush was governor, and there was a big push for life sciences and healthcare, and there was a lot of money put into some of those programs that brought into South Florida some big names. And I saw a lot of growth in aviation. Obviously, tech now in the last decade has been kind of technology-led economic development, or the growth of a community through the tech industry has been a huge focus. Building that ecosystem, that entrepreneurial ecosystem, has been a big focus. And then in the last maybe 5-6 years, the conversation of equity and inclusion that was always there, but clearly elevated into, I think, more of a dynamic discussion among a lot of businesses. Environmental sustainability, and what is it? The UN sustainability goals, and just environmental resilience clearly is another major conversation for business. So you're constantly trying to understand what are those national trends, how they fit into business discussions. I think the other constant is always talent, and how talent drives business locations. Historically, I think we were always trying to compensate for what was maybe not always correctly, but the assumption was that we just didn't have the talent in South Florida, that our institutions weren't at the same level as X or Y. That conversation, I really do feel, has changed in the last 4 or 5 years. Companies are specifically wanting to invest in Miami because of the talent. Now the question is, do we have enough of what they're looking for? Do we have enough engineers? Do we have enough, financial professionals, or whatever? But that's something that we've long focused on. I think the challenge is where's an economic development agency you can really bring impact into the talent question. While you have your colleges and universities really producing that talent, you have the businesses that are obviously hiring it, but there's that opportunity to try to bring the public and private sectors and the education institutions together in a way to grow the economy.
I think that's an interesting point, because you say 5 or 6 years ago, and that's about right. I remember when my kids all grew up here. They went to school through Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and we have one graduated from UF and another one from Florida Gulf Coast. But they and their friends all thought, we have to move away to get the job. So it was kind of like a chicken or the egg thing, because the jobs that they were looking for weren't here. But now, especially the oldest son, who's in finance, all his friends were coming back, or most of them are coming back. They had gone to New York, they'd gone to San Francisco for tech and finance, and they're coming back. So thank you for the work that you do, because
great to hear.
I hated the fact that they were gone. But it's really nice to know that they're coming back and that there are those job opportunities for them here.
Basically, she's thanking you for bringing all of her kids back home.
I wish I could take credit for that, but that's part of I have a 14 and 12-year-old, and I hope that I don't know if what their path will be, but I hope that they will at least have the option, if they want to stay in Miami, that there are all the options and opportunities for them here as they could find in another market, and that's been a motivator for me.
Great. Well, thank you.
It seems to me that there's so many changes, and I love the fact that you have the perspective, being born and raised in Seattle and then being here for 18 years. You still have that bird's eye view, where we have a colleague that always says that investors come into Miami, those that have been born and raised in Miami, they kind of see development from the ground floor, right? You're driving through the spaces, but people that are coming in from out of town, they're seeing it from a bird's eye view, because they have to take a wider lens to really understand the market and to really understand what they're coming into. And I wanted to ask you, I had a question about how you've seen Miami-Dade change. To me, I think over the last 3 years, we've seen a rapid change in the conversations that have been in the ether about Miami, and some of the misconceptions and perceptions regarding, for example, the talent pool has, to me, changed dramatically over the last 2-3 years. And we always tell our brokers and really anybody who listens that the Beacon Council is an incredible resource, and following the Beacon Council is really an important component of for us. And so I really wanted to ask you, because there's so much to say about Miami-Dade County. You could talk about quality of life. You could talk about the pool of talent. You could talk about the economic conditions that are in the state of Florida overall, right? And Miami as a global business center. You could speak about our infrastructure, our ports, our airport, and we're still a very young city. So when you're pitching Miami-Dade County, what are your top 3 things that you want to convey about why it would be a great idea for corporations to bring their business to Miami?
You're right. There's so many different ways to kind of skin that. And I think part of that, whoever you're talking to, obviously you want to know your audience. And so trying to understand as best you can walking into that room, what are their decision drivers, what's important to them. But, to try to answer your question, talent has to be number one, even if maybe you don't think it is. It's got to be. It is. The essential component for any business location. You can talk about incentives, you can talk about taxes, you can talk about infrastructure, you said, but none of those things are going to ultimately make a business successful if they can't operate with the right people. And what's really exciting is not only the great talent that we produce here. We're still more than 50% foreign born. We have people from all over the world that are choosing to locate them, to move themselves to Miami. And as we know, a lot of the migration to Miami are people with professionals with degrees that are coming from, for a variety of reasons, political, economic, or otherwise. And they're bringing, that's a huge benefit to South Florida. But then some of the domestic migration that's happened, or I should say increased in the last few years. I mean, wealthy people or people of means from New York relocating to South Florida is not necessarily a news story, but it has increased, tenfold. And that opportunity for us to continue to attract folks from not just the greater New York area, Chicago, California, that conversation has again really changed. So talent is number one. I think business climate is another big one. That includes, yes, we've got a great tax regulatory climate, but we have we talk about a welcoming and open business community. What does that really mean? And everyone says, we're open for business, but okay. There are a number of times, and this is always, I think, something that makes us feel good, where companies say, we've been in X state or city for a decade, or we have an office in some other place, and I've never met the mayor. I've never spoken to an elected official. We've tried to get a permit for X, and I don't get a call back. But in Miami, be it through Beacon Council or through any other partner, there's really an openness. I think this community is excited and willing to welcome newcomers and try to. We're proud of our community, want to show it off, and there's that real sense of excitement and willingness to support business. I think that's a really big piece. And the last to kind of round that out would be, we have a lot of great infrastructure for certain industries. So our downtown environment, the airport, the seaport, we've invested in some really kind of state-of-the-art or industry-leading infrastructure to support our growth. That's not necessarily across the board, however. We have some pretty big challenges. Obviously, we're not a major industrial market. If you're looking for large industrial facilities or land, 20, 50 acres of land, that's going to be a challenge. If you're looking for a market that has a really dynamic transportation system, pretty good. Brightline's a fantastic addition. Tri-Rail now coming into downtown. Metro Rail, Metro Mover, but we know that to really grow, we're going to have to expand that. Our housing stock, we have to address as well. So I think there's some challenges there, but for some of the industries we're trying to grow, especially tech, finance, trade and logistics, life sciences and healthcare, we've got a great competitive position.
What is the most misunderstood concept about the Beacon Council or working with the Beacon Council?
I've gotten questions all types over the years. I think one of the things that we always want to clarify is that our services are at no cost. So we are funded by primarily Miami-Dade County. We have a number of private sector investors as well. We're a public-private partnership. And that investment into Beacon Council underwrites all the services that my team provides. So we're really here to help. And we're, the only thing we're selling is the concept of Miami. I think the other thing that sometimes is misunderstood is the role that incentives play in business relocations or expansions. When we go back and look over the last decade, on average, 11%, so between 10 and 12% of our projects each year are incentivized. So it's a very small part. So when we typically, we can talk about what a project means for us, but we typically support about 50 or so companies a year. So we're talking about between 4 and 6 companies that are incentivized each year. And those incentives are not funded by the Beacon Council. We do not sit on a big, mattress of cash, if you will. These are programs that are established by our state, our county, our municipalities, and we help companies identify their eligibility and apply and secure those funds. But incentives are a small part of what we do. They just happen to be the ones that hit the newspaper, are the most talked about. That's when you get politicians involved. That's when you get bigger announcements, and so that's what a lot of people assume that we do, but it's a very small.
Yeah.
So as a follow-up real quick, what is the number one service that people who contact you directly are looking for if it's not incentives?
Right. So we do get a lot of calls of, hey, I want an incentive. And then you talk through it with them, and it just, for a variety of reasons, it might not align. And that's partly the way our programs are structured, but also misunderstanding of, what the process is. Where we find that we provide the most value is in kind of 2 ways. Information about our market There are even companies that are here locally don't understand the resources that are available to them. They might not understand the kind of the broader landscape of the political system, the talent availability, some of our economic drivers, again, like the airport, seaport, but especially those that are out of market, misunderstanding. So we spend a lot of time sharing information, telling people what those opportunities are. But primarily then it's what we call contacts and referrals. We maintain as best we can a lot of relationships across a lot of organizations, try to be knowledgeable about all the different support services, all the different functions of everything from the Association of Realtors to the Career Source South Florida to the South Florida Regional Planning Council, blah, blah, blah. And so we're there to try to make the connection. So when we speak to a company and they do XYZ and they're trying to figure out how to enter the market, we can give them information, but then we can also say, you really need to speak to Rolando Aedo at the CVB because he's going to know how to connect you to X. Or you need to speak to Jennifer because she's going to be able to give you the skinny on the corporate real estate landscape and understand what submarket is going to be the best fit, and on and on. That's really where we spend, honestly, 80-90% of our time.
Yeah, I always have seen the Beacon Council, and I have an interesting relationship I wanted to share with you, but with the Beacon Council. But I see you all as to be connectors, right, and to be problem solvers. Like every time that we've interacted, whether it is a company that is coming in here, but they need a very strong electrical grid, right? Because of the type of business that they want to install. So the connectivity that you have, whether you're connecting with somebody at FPL and then somebody locally in Miami-Dade County to figure out whether the grid is there to provide what they need in order for them to grow. And so, I love that you have a great purview to how the county works, right? And how you navigated. What I love about it even more is that you have that perspective, not only from the public sector, but from the private sector as well. So you really are able to connect the amalgam that makes up what Miami-Dade County is all about. I as Jennifer mentioned, in a prior life, I was a teacher for 10 years. And I remember I taught social studies and government and economics. And I remember that going to a one-day training that was provided by the Beacon Council. And we spent a day with the Beacon Council, and then we had to create a lesson plan out of that day that had to do with, some economic development. By the way, you can still Google it. You can Google my last name and Google the Three Little Pigs, because we did a whole lesson about teaching higher order thinking skills. And that was my first interaction with the Beacon Council. And I thought that was great because, it just gives you so much access to every aspect of the community, because education is also an important component for those that are coming into our county. So I wanted to ask you, what is, and you alluded to it, we also have some challenges, right? And I think your CEO has spoken about the fact that, but we have the right people in place to be able to address those challenges, right? We've spoken about housing affordability and some of the other items that you mentioned. So what are you seeing as the biggest challenge to attracting businesses to Miami-Dade County?
Yeah. Well, first of all, no community is perfect, right? I mean, New York is maybe one of the best cities in the world. They've got some serious challenges. Seattle, every time I tell people from Seattle's beautiful. Yeah. They have some massive homeless issues that they're struggling through right now, that the downtown core is emptied like a lot of, other cities. Miami has, of course, its own challenges. I think that the primary one right now we're seeing that impacts business is the cost of housing. And again, that's tying back to talent. So if you are, let's give a real world example. Kaseya, who announced, I guess that was last year now in 2023, that they're going to continue to expand and they're going to add 3,400 new jobs into downtown Miami. Fantastic. Wow. Any community, would salivate over that type of opportunity, a homegrown technology company adding thousands of jobs. The ability, and they're great wages. I forget exactly that. I think there was somewhere around 110, 120,000 average wage, right? Which is well above the average wage for Miami County. The ability for them to hire folks locally, not because the talent, if it's available, but then where these people can live, and to recruit people from, call it a Dallas or Atlanta, where they have these large suburban areas that you can live in a 3,000 square foot home and, commute in, a reasonable amount of time into a downtown center. That is very limited in Greater Miami. And so right now, I think the biggest depressant, if you will, on our growth, which has been pretty astronomical coming out of, the early days of COVID 2020, is the overall cost. And now we've seen, you guys know better than I, but we've seen those numbers, I think, kind of peak maybe fall of last year. Things are starting to quote unquote level out.
Right.
And some of that is, changing in zoning. Some of that is new construction. Some of that is it's kind of just simple supply and demand too. We had a huge demand for our market and people relocating. And a lot of those people that were relocating had the means to, spend, another few extra percent on a home to win the deal. And that drove our housing prices up. That was also coupled with national inflation, and then the Inflation Reduction to try to, increase interest rates, and all those things compound where we had, I think 2023, a real challenge there where, we were becoming unaffordable. And we know that with the federal government, we had that announcement that South Florida was kind of ground zero for housing unaffordability. And our mayor took took that to heart and took addressed that in a major way. And I think that's starting to pay off now.
Yeah. And I think that we have other, the state is also a part of the solution, right? Because it's a multi-pronged solution. So like things like the Live Local Act, we're starting to see how that is having an effect. And so I'm sure that that's part of your presentation as well.
So aside from, there's always challenges, but I think especially since, as you said, you get to travel so much, what has one of your biggest surprises been, either in terms of the effect of the Beacon Council or the popularity of Miami, whatever it is, in your travels and talking to companies? What has been the biggest surprise?
Well, I think, I'm quoting somebody else because I think this might even be a Bill Talbert line. There's plenty of quotes from Bill Talbert. But a decade ago, you'd be in another market, maybe be it Europe or other parts of the U.S. and you say you're from Miami, like, oh, Miami, interesting, okay. But now, now that's changed a little bit. It's Miami, very excited and I love that city. So I think I've maybe it's not surprised, but I'm happy to see that what we recognize is what we have here wasn't maybe always understood, especially in the U.S. I think that when you're in Spain, when you're in France, Europeans have an understanding of Miami as an international city, and obviously Latin America even more so of what Miami represents in Latin America. In the U.S., again, coming from Seattle, honestly, I still get that. I was just home for around the holidays. Miami, what's going on down there? What's Florida all about? Like all you hear is the the kind of the political beat of we're doing such and such to our schools or this, that, and the other. And it's a big state. There's a lot of a lot of different things going on here. So I think there's still room to correct that narrative. But when I started at Beacon, some of our talking points, I remember wasn't too long ago, I was looking through came across a presentation that we did some years ago, and it was top 10 misconceptions about Miami. And it was, everybody speaks Spanish and there's too many bugs and crime is so high. I mean, this is, we were dealing with in, 08, 09. The conversation is totally different now, of course. It's a much more modern conversation. But the idea of like the kind of Miami Vice concept is so stuck in people's minds outside of our market. I still find that it somehow comes up in conversation, maybe not directly, but indirectly.
Yeah. But James, don't you find also, and to your point, when you're speaking with someone that is out of the country, right, looking into Miami, that there is a power to the name of the brand, but sometimes they're talking about from Palm Beach down to the Keys, and they're calling it Miami, right? That's another really interesting component here, right?
Exactly, and we saw this a lot in that kind of migration during COVID. We were talking to people like, "Oh yeah, I just moved to Miami. Oh yeah, what neighborhood? What area? Oh, Palm Beach." I'll tell you an interesting story. We had the opportunity. This was some years ago. I joined a group that went up to New York to pitch JetBlue to not to relocate their headquarters. I mean, that's been another conversation that they've retained in New York, but to begin flying to MIA, and I think they do now. But this stuck with me. Is they said they let us do all the presentations and do our thing, and they said thank you so much, but we've already polled our passengers, and they don't see the difference. When we offer them flights into Fort Lauderdale, they're flying to Miami, and so we don't feel the need to fly into MIA because you're already there. And I think that kind of stuck with me in thinking about a lot of people see. You're right. The brand of Miami is really anything south of Okeechobee.
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing, right? That's not a bad thing. It just shows what a great job Miami has done at branding itself as a place where everybody wants to be. So
you're exactly right. And the funny thing is on the flip side of that, we get ourselves all tied up. If I say Miami, am I talking about the city of Miami? And if I'm at county government, I better add the Miami-Dade County into that conversation. Or if I'm with our friends in Broward and I don't say South Florida, I say Greater Miami, I'll get some comments on the side. So how we talk about the brand is also very interesting.
And I think one of the things that the county did that was brilliant years ago is that they recognized the strength of the brand of Miami. So they added Miami in front of Dade County, right? And something that the other counties, I don't think, have been as resourceful or as successful in doing. So
for sure. Well, if you're a Heat fan, it's Wade County.
Yes, so that's true.
There you go.
I always find that I think every broker in South Florida needs to listen to a presentation about our market from the Beacon Council. You guys do amazing work at really understanding first and foremost the market, and then being able to convey the message that is going to move the needle. So what advice do you have for brokers about working with economic development entities and particularly the Beacon Council?
Yeah, thank you. I like to think that we do a good job, but honestly, we learn a lot from our broker community too. The narrative of what Miami is and what we have to offer is ever changing, and the broker community and other professional services, like our lawyers and our bankers, they're on the ground just like we are, and getting that feedback. How people should work with us, it's just an open invitation. We're, as I said, there's kind of no fee for service. We're here to champion Miami. We're here to partner with everybody. We're here to have wins for our community. We don't need to own those wins. Maybe that goes back to some of the misconceptions there's always, I get the comments that, we want to claim, Beacon tries to claim X or Y. Honestly, that's not the case. We want Miami to win. And sure, we'll add our name to the press release if the company requests, but we want the mayor's name in neon lights on that announcement as well, and whomever is part of the mix. But reach out, spend some time with our team. If it's at an event, if we're hosting something, if you're a broker, you're hosting an event, or there's some opportunity to learn about a new building, please call us up, invite us over. We're hosting a group from JLL next week that's representing a building here in Brickell, just to come talk about the building and what the opportunities are and what kind of companies they're looking for, and how we can support each other, mutually. It's about, like anything else, relationships. And the more that we know, I know to call, Fernando or Jennifer if I have a question. I need that list to be as long as possible to be able to support the requests we have, and vice versa. Hopefully that we can bring value when a broker is working with a client and trying to land that deal. We have absolutely no problem feeding information through the broker. You guys put your logo on the top of that deck or that page, or bring us in as a confidential partner to talk about the incentive programs or how we can assist with permitting. We don't even need to know the name of the company, at the early stages, and we do that sometimes as well. Just come in and kind of give our pitch and provide information, and we'll take the direction from the broker. Again, in the end, all we're trying to do is tell the story of Miami, tell about, share that narrative of what our opportunities are, and hopefully win more deals.
And the Beacon Council has been a great resource to realtors. We have a great partnership. The Miami Realtors Association has a great partnership. And personally, I thank you, because I've picked up the phone a couple of times to call you and say, hey, I have a crypto banking firm coming down here, and they have a huge energy requirement, and between you and FPL, kind of help pinpoint the area. So thank you for that. I also wanted to point...
Maybe we should call them for paddleboard ports.
I know. Oh my gosh. How many calls do you get from paddleboard companies or pickleball?
Pickleball, that's right.
Interestingly, no. I can't say that I've gotten...
Yeah,
I guess they know that we can't help too much, if they're manufacturing or if they're, an office operation. But for recreational, not much we can do there.
And I do want to point to Fernando's previous question about brokers working with you, as well as investors and business owners. The Beacon Council has a wonderful site selection page that is full of information on demographics, workforce. I think it lists like 47 different cities that you can compare to find out if they have the workforce you're looking for, the population you're looking for, et cetera. So I would definitely tell our listeners that that's an awesome resource on your site.
Yeah.
That's a great plug, if I could just add. So MiamiDadesites.com, and it's a partnership between the Beacon Council and Miami-Dade County. The county provides all the GIS overlay.
And that's MiamiDadesites.com.
Sites plural, right? MiamiDadesites.com plural.
Right, and we'll put that link on our show notes.
Good.
And the third partner, of course, is the Realtors Association, because the majority of the properties on that site is a direct feed from your MLS. But what's great is it's the sites. But as you said, if you go poke around there, you can get full demographic information. You can draw a circle around a neighborhood or a building, and you can get all the businesses in the area. You can get the educational attainment. So all these great levels of detail that typically you used to have to call us and we'd run our analysis, and then a week would come back with a PDF or a report. Now you can just click around and find that information however you like. And obviously, if you have questions, you can always call us. But it's a great free resource for the broker community, or for any business or individual that's interested in learning more about certain parts of Miami.
Yes, thank you for that. It's very rich and detailed. At the beginning, you said that you would go over, I don't know if it's still considered one community, one goal, or what the goals are for this year for the Beacon Council, what the strategic plan is, the new strategic plan. If you'd love to, I'd love for you to cover that for our listeners.
Let's do it. Yeah. So you mentioned one community, one goal. I'll start there. That was actually, there were two phases of that. The most recent one, I think goes back to like 2012, so over a decade or so, and it really, I think, set the path for Beacon Council, but I do believe to Miami at a larger extent, on the growth over the last decade, identifying the opportunities for us to focus in on a tech-led ecosystem, establishing our target industries, aligning our education institutions with economic development. In what we have this group called our Academic Leaders Council, where we have the presidents of the universities engaged. But like anything in time, it needed to be refreshed and reconsidered. And so right now we've kind of developed two things. We have Opportunity Miami, which is led by Matt Hagman. And that is really a future-focused program identifying kind of not only the challenges that we're facing, but solutions nationally, internationally, how other communities are addressing these things, and then trying to tie it back to what does that mean for our community. And Opportunity Miami is its own webpage. It's a Beacon Council owned program, but branded slightly differently to kind of address a different audience. But that's not our strategic plan. So as Rod Miller, who's our current CEO, he joined us February, March of 23. So he's about 10 months in or so. And he came, he's led economic development organizations all around the country, New Orleans, Detroit, and most recently Puerto Rico. So we were able to recruit him to Miami. I think he's a fantastic fit for our market. Speaks Spanish, knows the Caribbean obviously very well from his most recent post, but has deep relationships across the economic development and private sector industry. And so as he's kind of gotten to know the market and through the summer and then leading up to what was the kind of the rollout of our strategic plan at our annual meeting in November, we've kind of repositioned the organization. I'll kind of cut through that right now. So really establishing an updated mission for the organization, which is to build a more sustainable, inclusive, and competitive Greater Miami for all. So before it was, our mission is to help create jobs. Great. Yes, we should be doing that, but we never really answer the why, right? So this is taking that a little further, right? So sustainable, meaning not the ups and downs, the boom and bust cycles that we've had in the past. How do we grow a more sustained growth trajectory for our community? Of course, sustainability, also environmental sustainability. We don't want to be inundated. And yes, we'll have hurricanes and other storms in the future, but how can we minimize those impacts? Inclusive, of course, the only way that our economy is going to be as successful as it can be is allowing everybody to participate. So that means everything from gender to race to age to what neighborhood you're in should have as much equal access to the prosperity that we have in our marketplace. So that's something that we have to focus on. Obviously, there's a lot of money and opportunity in this market, but it's not necessarily accessible to all. And then competitive in, as you guys know, it's a very competitive market out there. Miami has had a good run in recent years. Our future is not necessarily secure. We have to, keep at that every day and understand, from a policy standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint, from a cost perspective, we talked about us being less competitive because of our housing costs. We really need to address those issues. And then, so that's kind of our key focus. Within that, we have 5 pillars, which are a little more straightforward. Grow our economy. That's business development. We got to keep expanding and growing new business here. Marketing campaigns, updating the Miami brand to include not just it's a great destination to come and stay in a hotel and visit, but it's also a great place to relocate your business. Investing in people, so that goes to the talent piece. Mm-hmm. It's we need to continue to invest and grow in the not just the education system, but to opportunities, shaping the future, looking at those things 5-10 years down the road, and that's really where there's a lot of conversations right now about our climate resiliency and how we can turn that into an opportunity, transformational change for our market, and then deliver on all this and track it and be able to share our successes with the community. So that framework is how we are approaching our work this year. We're on the fiscal year, same as the county, October 1. Kind of kick this off. We're in just the second quarter, but we're really excited about the direction that this is going and kind of the new what the new impacts for Beacon Council could be.
I think that as people are listening to this, and I've heard you and Rod speak to, one of the things that I love about that sentence, to build a more sustainable, inclusive, competitive Miami. I love the ending, which is open to all. And I know we've spoken about not only in the part of inclusivity and the part of equal opportunity is also about, everyone benefiting from better paying jobs, from better opportunities. And I know that's a big part. And, I once did a presentation on Miami. And one of the things that I wanted to leave people with was about the fact that we're a very young city, right? We're about 126 years old. And if you look at all the major cities around the world, Los Angeles, 240 years old, Boston, 391 years old, New York City, 398 years old, Tokyo, 400 years, Shanghai, 731, London is over 2,000 years old, Paris is over, we're at a point where I feel that Miami is maturing and growing, and I feel that institutions like the Beacon Council are a big part of how we're going to grow conscientiously, that we're not just going to get there by happenstance, but that it requires a steady hand, and it requires civic institutions to be a part of that steady hand. So, go ahead.
Yeah. You just remind me. So Rod tells this story a lot, and I'll summarize, but I think it's kind of a great example. He talks about his teenage son wanting to race him and how he lost. But you talk about the youth of Miami, and it is we're young, but we're kind of getting there. Like, it's time to get serious about life and figure out a career or whatever.
That's right.
But to do that, you have to kind of get serious about a few things. So I think that's where we've been able to have some amazing growth and success, without necessarily digging deep in some places and figuratively and investing. Whereas, right now the septic to sewer issue that is led by certain county commissioners. I mean, that for long-term growth, we're going to have to make some really tough decisions there, right? Transit, it's horribly expensive, but if we don't do it now, we're already a decade too late. But if we don't do it for another 10 years, damn, we're going to be 20 years too late. And another example. So there's and coordination as well. We Beacon Council work well with a lot of our partners, but you look at other markets where there's deeper integration, where there's less infighting between, the cities and the county and the region, and this mess of, as I said, what do we call this? What do we call that? There's a lot of refinement that still needs to be done. And that's actually exciting. I think that's the fun work we have ahead of us.
No, absolutely.
Before you get to the
Sure.
last question. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, what's one lesson that living in Miami from Seattle has taught you that you think everybody should learn at some point in their life? Because living in Miami is different from living in a lot of places in the U.S.
The first thing that comes to mind is in the summer, don't try to rush. Don't try to do anything too fast because you'll just break out into a sweat. So that was I've gotten used to it now, but those first few summers, No, I don't know. Maybe this is not unique to Miami, but I love we call it diversity, but it's kind of just the mosaic of Miami, and you go out and you can find anything at any time, and that's something I think that people that are relocating to Miami, they're either going to love that and thrive on the
dynamism. No,
yes.
now you got me doing it.
Miami, the dynamic community.
You guys are a pair of wordsmiths.
But other people, honestly, and we've talked to folks over the years that have come and they're like, this isn't for me. You know what? That's fine. There's a big world out there. Have at it, but it's
a special place. It really, really is.
And no matter what the the international news cycle, my wife and I always joke, there's always a Miami angle, right? You're always going to find that somebody passed through Miami to get to something, and
that's right.
So somehow we find ourselves in the mix on. Could be anything.
Yeah. So James, we can't thank you enough for your time. This has been wonderful. Is there one last thing that you want to leave our listeners with to a big takeaway?
Big takeaway. So most of your listeners are local brokers, right?
We really don't know. We have no idea who's listening.
We actually have somebody from Brussels who is one of our most frequent listeners.
That's true. That's true. So, shout out.
Shout out to Brussels.
You guys should do some analytics. And
yes.
We're waiting. We're waiting. This is still very, very new. We're in our infancy, kind of like Miami.
I think that, the takeaway for local or our international listeners is just the optimism that I have, and I think a lot of my colleagues have for Miami. We talked about it being a young community. We talked about all the, the growth. We talked about some of the challenges, but those challenges are great challenges to have for a market that's growing. We're not talking about, oh my gosh, our retail, all our major retail is leaving downtown. We're not talking about our challenge of keeping talent because, Jennifer's kids are now moving back to Miami and so are a lot of other folks. We're not talking about, rusting infrastructure in our business centers. We are challenged by amazing growth and amazing demand, and we are geographically blessed definitely situated in the United States, but very much of the region, and I think culturally represent that. We're the closest U.S. port to Africa, and great ties to you can get anywhere from MIA that you want. You're going to get that Japanese flight one of these days, but just the optimism of where Miami is and our future. There's just so much good to be done. A lot of the new to market folks are challenging some of the I think the existing philanthropy in this market. Mm-hmm. I think that's exciting just to see what where people are putting some really big dollars, and that's that's going to be transformational long term, and I think that's challenging others to think differently about investing in our community in a long term way. As we know, in some ways it's been a community where people weren't necessarily convinced they were going to be here for the long term. Maybe just until the change of government, or just until I get the next thing. And there's some deeper roots being looked at.
Yeah.
So
well, I love that your biggest takeaway is optimism. And by the way, one of Jennifer's kids, Corinna, is the editor of this podcast. She also makes amazing banana bread. I say that shamelessly because I haven't had it in a while. You're a big fan of banana bread? I'm going to get you a piece of Corinna's banana bread.
Yeah, I was just thinking. Put what in it?
Chocolate chips? Is this a chocolate banana bread, or
she can? It's a vegan banana bread, but you'd never know it. It's really good. Amazing.
Take it from me.
Let's kill it for me.
No, she won't do walnut. The walnut's bad.
Good.
Walnut's good. Okay.
All right.
So she did go to SCAD, but she came back. So
yeah.
So I've got 2 out of 3 back. I know I didn't give you a heads up. We do a fun fact at the end of podcasts.
Sure.
So I don't know if you have one or not that you want to pull up. James, if not, I'll go to Fernando and let you think about it.
So we always like to share any, little bit of data that we get. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is this comes from the multi-economist, which we quote Elliot Eisenberg. And this is about construction in, towards the end of 2023. So for the year ending November 2023, construction spending totaled $2.05 trillion. That's 7.3% of GDP, and it is up 11.3% year over year. And we're hoping that this continues because we're seeing the need to add more housing units and for that growth of construction, which we're certainly seeing it in Miami. And we believe, as we mentioned earlier with the Live Local Act, that this is something that is going to continue to grow. The Whitman family just announced that they're doing a development in Bal Harbour Shops, which they've been able to create this mixed-use development using the Live Local Act, which means that in this 600-unit residential component of the complex, 240 of those units are going to be for workforce housing, which means that they're 120% of the average median income for Miami-Dade County, which would mean that a family that is making $90,000 a year is going to be able to afford to buy one of the units in Bal Harbour Shops that are soon to be under construction. So, again, I think that bodes well for addressing some of the growing pains. Let's not call them challenges, which is what it is. They're growing pains. So how about you, partner?
Well, let me see. I think James came up with something.
Yeah, well, this I read this yesterday, and I was just talking to my kids about it this morning. It's a little random, but Hertz, the car rental company, announced that they are going to sell their full fleet of electric vehicles. It's 20,000 EVs. They obviously, I don't know when this was, a year or two ago, believed that was the future of car rentals and purchased, I guess, 20,000 plus. And it's not working out so well. And as I understand, primarily because of the infrastructure to support an electric vehicle. And I happen to have one myself, but the only way it works is I have a charger at home.
Right.
If you're renting a car, it doesn't work. So I think it's an interesting kind of analogy of how infrastructure needs to keep up with some of these other business decisions. It might be the right ones, but
right,
it's not going to work.
Or maybe they were just ahead of their time. We actually have a colleague, shout out to Gonzalo Sosa, who came and was visiting here, and he rented an EV and he loved the car, and he said it was beautiful until he tried to go to Tampa.
Exactly.
And realized that there just weren't charging stations, that he wasn't going to be able to get there on one battery charge, and so he had to cancel that trip. But your point is, we need the infrastructure, and it needs to be, I guess, if you're an Elon Musk fan and you drive a Tesla, you seem to be okay because most of the infrastructure has been built for Teslas, but he did not rent a Tesla. He rented a different car, and they did not have the infrastructure for the rest of the state. So good point and great fact. I knew you'd be able to to rally
Yeah,
with no
sure.
warning. For me, it was that Spain maintained its position as the top foreign direct investment market into Miami in 2023.
Wow.
Have you seen any of that with people coming through the Beacon Council?
So Spain is the number one foreign direct investment market for us from a project standpoint. Part of that is, we believe, because we've invested heavily in Spain. We go there every year. We have deep relationships with the trade promotion agencies, the binational chambers of commerce, and we always put on at least one, if not multiple events there, kind of, again, telling our story, why to do business in Miami. We are finalizing dates, but we'll be there. I think we're looking at the second week of April to once again spend some time. Last year we were in Madrid and Galicia and have seen some results every time we spend 3-5 days in Spain. We come back with a dozen or so prospects, and a year later we've got a couple wins to show for it. So Spain's a great market for Miami, and I think will be for a long time.
That's
Great.
awesome.
Thank you so much.
Well, James, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to everybody for listening. This has definitely been a special episode. There's a lot of great data and great information. And we welcome you to visit the Miami-Dade Beacon Council website. It's just filled with information. And if you ever have an opportunity to listen to a presentation by James or Rod or any one of the Beacon Council, do yourselves a favor and definitely attend. So for Jennifer and myself, James, we thank you, and bye, everybody.
Make it a great day.